March 12, 1943. North Atlantic, 2:17 hours. The sea is black. Not dark, black. A void stretching beyond the reach of the TBF Avenger's cockpit glass. Spray slams against the fuselage as the aircraft claws through freezing wind, engines humming low like a predator stalking in the dark. Inside, Lieutenant Jack Worthington wipes a thin layer of condensation from his goggles. His navigator, Ensign Alf Morales, leans over a glowing new instrument mounted awkwardly to the console, a box of knobs, wires, and flickering light that no one fully trusts yet. It gives off a faint electrical buzz, like a radio trying to pick up a signal from another world. Worthington whispers through the intercom, "Alf, tell me this thing is seeing something." For a moment, nothing, just static, just the roar of the engine, just a blind, endless ocean below. Then, a single blip, faint, almost hesitant. But there, Alf's heartbeat spikes. He taps the screen twice, afraid it's a glitch. Contact bearing 186. Moving slow, submerged just below the surface. Jack, it's a U-boat. Worthington tightens his grip on the throttle. The cold open of a hunt is always the same, quiet, uncertain, electric. But this time is different, because tonight, the TBF Avenger is stalking prey in total darkness, guided not by moonlight or flares, but by an experiment many in the Navy still call impossible. From the outside, the aircraft looks like any other Avenger, but hidden inside its belly is a set of ASB radar guts that were never meant to fly on a torpedo bomber. They rattle with every vibration. They hum like restless machinery. They represent a gamble, one conceived by a bold, stubborn Grumman engineer named Robert Bob Hall, a man who believed the ocean could be made to give up its secrets. The Avenger banks left. The sea below glimmers for a split second under the aircraft's running lights, then vanishes again into black. Alf watches the radar return strengthen, a slow pulse, like the heartbeat of the ocean itself. "There," he murmurs, "dead ahead. She's big." Worthington doesn't breathe. He can almost see it. The silhouette of a Type 7 U-boat gliding beneath the waves, its captain thinking the night is his ally, thinking darkness will hide him, thinking aircraft can't hunt what they can't see. But tonight, that old rule is dying. Worthington calls out, "Prepare depth charges." Alf's gloved hands hover over the arming switches. His stomach knots. No one has done this at night. Not like this. Not guided by a machine they barely understand. Every second the wind screams louder. Every second the radar glow tightens its grip around their nerves. This moment, this exact freezing, pitch-black moment, exists because months earlier, far from the Atlantic, inside a cluttered workshop in Bethpage, New York, an engineer sketched an idea on scrap paper that engineers, officers, and even pilots dismissed as fantasy. Pair radar with a torpedo bomber, mount it on the Avenger, use it to hunt submarines under cover of darkness? Most said it was madness. A nice theory, doomed to fail. Yet here, tonight, the ocean whispers back to the radar screen. A U-boat breathes below them, and the Avenger prepares to strike. Worthington dips the nose. The altimeter spins down. Wind claws at the cockpit. The radar echo grows stronger, closer, undeniable. Alf swallows hard. "Jack, it's right beneath us." Worthington flips the safety cover off the release switch. The ocean waits. The U-boat glides. And the Avenger descends into its first true test, the moment that will prove whether Bob Hall's wild idea was genius or suicide. Bob Hall didn't look like the kind of man who would change the war at sea. It was August 1942, months before Worthington's Avenger would hunt through black Atlantic skies. Inside Grumman's Bethpage plant, the air smelled of hot metal, oil, and the sharp tang of electrical solder. Engineers moved to the hangars like ants around a hive, paperwork tucked under arms, blueprints rolled under shoulders, shouting mechanical jargon over the echo of rivet guns. Hall stood in the middle of it all, sleeves rolled, pencil tucked above one ear, staring at the skeletal frame of a TBF Avenger with a stubbornness that made test pilots nervous. He wasn't loud like some designers, wasn't charismatic, didn't make speeches. He simply thought, and when Bob Hall thought, the entire hangar felt it. Behind him, a junior engineer muttered, Sir, the Navy already said no. Radar sets are too bulky, too unstable, too heavy. They'll tear the Avenger apart. Another voice chimed in. And even if they don't, how do you calibrate radar for a moving aircraft? A dive will scramble the contacts. A bank will distort the returns. Submarines won't sit still for a clean ping. Hall didn't answer. Instead, he took the blueprint of the Avenger's internal structure and dragged a thick red line around the instrument bay. This is space, he said quietly. Wasted space. Enough for ASB radar guts. The room went silent. Everyone knew the ASB radar, a monstrous, temperamental early warning system meant for ships or larger aircraft. No one had ever considered cramming it inside a torpedo bomber, designed to skim wave tops at 200 knots. Hall tapped the blueprint. If you can see a submarine snorkel at night, you can end the wolf pack. The phrase echoed across the table like a challenge. A senior engineer frowned. The Navy thinks night hunting is suicidal. Aircraft can't kill what they can't see. Hall turned, eyes sharp behind wireframe glasses. Then we teach them to see. He said it calmly, as if talking about rearranging furniture. But everyone in the hangar felt a tremor, because this wasn't minor tinkering. This meant rewriting doctrine. This meant telling admirals they were wrong. This meant risking aircraft pilots and reputations on a machine that flickered, overheated, and sometimes refused to turn on unless you smacked it with a wrench. A week later, during the first demonstration, that exact thing happened. The radar sputtered, went dark, then hummed back to life with a stubborn shake. The Navy officers watching crossed their arms. One whispered, "This is what stands between us and the U-boat threat." Hall didn't respond. He simply powered the unit again, hands steady, voice calm. "Give it time," he said. "Give it a chance to speak." And slowly, painfully, the radar began painting faint returns across the screen. Buoys in the bay, small fishing boats, a distant pier. Imperfect, fuzzy, but real, enough to make the impossible feel within reach. From that moment, everything changed. Hall and his team tore into the Avenger's internal structure, rerouted wiring, reinforced panels, and adjusted power flow. They worked through nights, the plant echoing with the hum of generators long after the sun dipped behind the Long Island pines. Pilots visited the hangars with skepticism written on their faces. "You want me to fly this thing at night?" One asked, tapping the radar box with a knuckle. Hall replied, "Not want, need. The Atlantic is bleeding ships." The pilot stared at him, then at the radar, then back again. "Will it work?" Hall didn't lie. "It will if you trust it." Trust, that was a gamble. Because radar in 1942 wasn't the calm, clean sweep you see in movies. It stuttered, it ghosted, it lied, and sometimes it revealed truths no one was ready to face. Still, piece by piece, test flight by test flight, the Avenger evolved. The wiring stabilized. The antenna array found its rhythm. The cockpit crew learned to interpret echoes not as blurs, but as breathing metal beneath the waves. Hall began to realize something. This wasn't just an upgrade. This was a weapon the U-boats could never prepare for. A predator that hunted in silence, in darkness, in places submarines believed themselves gods of the deep. By late February 1943, the first radar-equipped Avengers shipped out. Some officers still called it a gimmick, others a toy. But the pilots who trained on it whispered a different name, the Night Eye. And those pilots headed into the Atlantic with a new kind of confidence, a quiet certainty that the ocean's deadliest hunters were no longer invisible. They just didn't know how quickly the U-boats would learn that too, because while Hall refined his creation in the factory, deep in the North Atlantic, one German captain heard a distant drone in the night long before he ever saw the aircraft hunting him, a sound that made him realize something new was coming. March 12, 1943, North Atlantic. Aboard you, 5:53, 2:10 hours. Captain Carl Metzger stood inside the conning tower, hands clasped behind his back, boots planted firmly on steel that throbbed with the pulse of diesel engines. The red battle lamps inside the control room cast long shadows across the faces of his crew, Men who had spent so long in the Atlantic that their eyes had adjusted to darkness better than daylight. Outside, the waves hammered the hull. The sea was restless tonight, wind biting, spray freezing almost instantly on the bridge rails. Perfect weather, Metzger thought, for the hunters of the deep. Perfect weather for us. The U-553 had just finished shadowing a convoy hours earlier, slipping beneath destroyer screens like a phantom. Now she cruised submerged at periscope depth, her snorkel barely breaking the surface. Metzger liked these nights where the Atlantic belonged to him, nights where aircraft were blind, clumsy, and pitifully easy to evade. And yet, something felt off. Not danger, not yet, but a disturbance. A subtle shift in the rhythm of the sea. He leaned in toward his hydrophone operator, who sat motionless with headphones clamped over his ears. Any screws? The operator shook his head. Nothing, her captain. The sky is empty. Metzger nodded, though unease prickled at his spine. Over the last month, rumors had filtered through U-boat channels, whispers of Allied aircraft appearing at night with uncanny precision, whispers of U-boats caught where no patrol should have been looking, whispers of new technology. Most captains dismissed it as Allied propaganda. Metzger wasn't so sure. He raised a periscope and scanned the horizon. Nothing but black-on-black waves. No moon, no stars, no silhouette of a patrol plane gliding overhead. And yet, he could feel something, like the ocean itself was holding its breath. He lowered the scope. Take us down to 90 meters. Maintain snorkel depth until ordered. His first officer frowned. Sir, at night, aircraft can't. They shouldn't, Metzger interrupted. But the Atlantic is changing. As if on cue, a faint tremor vibrated through the hull. So faint that most of the crew missed it. A distant, almost ghostly hum. The hydrophone operator froze. His hand shot up. Captain, I'm getting something. Metzger's eyes narrowed. Coordinates. The operator swallowed. Bearing 185. High altitude. Slow approach. I don't recognize the signature. Metzger's blood chilled. An aircraft. At night. Moving deliberately. Searching. He leaned closer. Is it circling? No, it's locking. Metzger stiffened. A single word hit him with the force of a hammer. Radar. Because no human eye could find a snorkel in a black sea. No pilot could track a submerged U-boat with such certainty. Metzger spun toward the engine room. Crash dive. Now! Klaxons blared. Crew scattered. Valves slammed open. The U-553 angled downward as ballast tanks flooded. The red lights in cabin flickered as the boat groaned, diving hard into the cold, crushing black. But it was too late. Above them, Worthington's Avenger dropped from clouds like a hawk diving on prey. The radar echo grew brighter, tighter, dead-centered. Alf Morales called out through trembling breath. Target at 60 meters. Closing fast. Worthington shoved the throttle, pulling the Avenger into position. Released depth charges. For steel drums tumbled into the night, spinning, hissing to the cold air before plunging into the ocean. Inside the U-553, Metzger felt the pressure spike, the sea tightening around the hull. The crew braced. A single second stretched into 5, 10, 15. Then, boom, a sound like the earth cracking apart. The U-boat bucked violently, lights exploding into darkness. Men crashed into bulkheads. Pipes burst. Water sprayed across the control room. The boat rolled hard to starboard. A second explosion hammered them. Then a third. Metzger slammed against a valve, teeth rattling, ribs screaming. He tasted blood. The hull groaned like a dying animal. He shouted through ringing ears, "Damage report." But he already knew. They'd been hunted. Not by moonlight. Not by chance. Something new had found them. Above the waves, Alf stared at the boiling water below, eyes wide. Jack, the radar says it's resurfacing. Or something's rising. Worthington held the Avenger steady, heart pounding. The sea frothed. Air bubbles roared upward. The dark shape of a submarine broke the surface, listing hard, lights flickering. Bob Hall's idea was working. Worthington whispered, "Dear God, we can actually see them in the dark." But the fight wasn't over. Because as a U-553 broke the surface, Metzger and his surviving crew scrambled to man the flak gun. A wounded animal fights hardest. Worthington realized he had seconds to react, or the Avenger would fall from the sky. The ocean, once silent, now screamed. Worthington yanked the Avenger into a tight circle as the U-553 erupted through the surface, water cascading off its hull in shimmering silver sheets. The submarine heaved sideways, wounded, smoke pouring from its aft section, but still alive. And on its conning tower, silhouettes moved with desperate speed. Alf Morales leaned out of his seat, eyes widening. "They're manning the flak gun. Jack, they're actually coming up to fight." Worthington clenched his jaw. The idea of a submarine surfacing at night to open fire was madness, a last, feral act of survival. The U-553's deck gun crew swung the 20mm cannon into position, the barrel glinting under faint starlight as the first tracer round snapped past the Avenger's wing. Red sparks arced through the darkness. "Jesus, they're firing blind." Alf shouted. "Not blind," Worthington replied. "At us." He pushed the Avenger lower, sliding dangerously close to the spray. The aircraft vibrated under the strain, metal rattling, radar unit humming behind them like a living thing. Worthington's gloved hands tightened around the control stick as he brought the Avenger in for a strafing run, something no training manual ever mentioned doing at night against a surfacing U-boat with a radar prototype strapped inside. But there were no manuals for this. There was only instinct and survival. "Hold on," he yelled. The Avenger dipped toward the U-553 like a steel hawk swooping on prey. Below, the German crew fired wildly, tracers whipping into the night air like burning ropes. Worthington's goggles caught the reflection of every red flash, each one a reminder that a single lucky hit could ignite the fuel tank and bring them all down in flames. But Worthington had two advantages tonight. He had surprise, and he had the night eye. Alf slammed the weapon controls forward. Guns armed. Worthington lined up the shot 1 second, 2 seconds of perfect alignment, and squeezed the trigger. The Avenger spat fire. A stream of .50 caliber rounds raked across the U-boat's deck, cutting through the flak crew as they scrambled for cover. Sparks burst across steel. One German sailor spun backward, thrown into the freezing water. Another dropped to his knees, gripping a shattered railing. But Metzger still fought. Inside the conning tower, blood streaming from a cut above his eye, the U-boat captain forced himself to stand. He grabbed the nearest crewman by the collar. "Get below. Seal the hatch. We dive again." The young sailor hesitated, eyes wide. "Herr Captain, we can't outrun an aircraft in the dark." "We won't outrun it," Metzger growled. "We hide from it." He didn't know how the Avenger had found them. He didn't know what new Allied devilry was being tested above the waves. But he understood one thing. The only escape was down. Deep, deeper than safety allowed. Deeper than the manuals recommended. The sailor hesitated. Another burst of Avenger gunfire ripped across the conning tower, showering them with metal shards. That made up his mind. He dove for the hatch. Worthington pulled the Avenger upward as the last of the tracers burned out. Alf scanned the radar screen. "Jack, they're trying to dive again. I'm still seeing movement." Worthington cursed. "Not on my watch." The Avenger banked sharply, engines roaring as they lined up for a second strike. But this time the ocean itself turned against them. Waves smashed against the submarine, obscuring its outline. Smoke drifted across the water like a shifting cloak. The radar return flickered, then pulsed again. Alf frowned. "It's wavering." The sub's dropping fast, the echoes getting thinner. Worthington's breath tightened. They had seconds. He reached for the depth charge controls. But before he could press down, the radar unit gave a sudden violent hiss, electrical sparks dancing across its housing. The prototype was overheating. Wires crackled. The whole cabin lit with a harsh blue-white flash. Alf recoiled. "Jack, the radar's failing." Worthington stared at the pulsing screen. It flickered, sputtered, came dangerously close to blacking out. "The night I was about to go blind." Worthington had a choice. Drop the charges now blind, or pull away and lose the only confirmed U-boat contact in months. He hovered his hand over the release switch, heart pounding. "Alf," he said quietly, "give me one more ping." Alf smacked the overheating unit with the heel of his glove. A desperate, foolish act. The screen flared. A final, clear return appeared dead ahead. Worthington didn't hesitate. He hit the switch. For more depth charges fell into the night, tumbling toward the fragile metal tube diving beneath the waves. Below the surface, Metzger heard the deep, terrible rumble of descending steel. He didn't pray. He simply closed his eyes and whispered. So the Allies have found a new way to see. The ocean swallowed his words. And then, a detonation so violent it split the darkness in two. Worthington shielded his eyes as a massive air bubble burst through the surface, followed by fire, oil, and debris. Alf whispered, "We got them." But neither man celebrated, because for the first time, they understood the truth. Radar wouldn't just change the night. It would change the war. March 18, 1943. Grumman Aircraft Engineering Corporation, Bethpage, New York. Rain hammered against the factory's tall windows, turning the world outside into gray smears of motion. Inside Hangar 3, Bob Hall stood over a disassembled radar mount, hands blackened with grease, eyes stinging from another sleepless night. He and his team had been running tests nonstop, stressing the prototype to its limits. If radar was going to fail, he needed it to fail here, not in the Atlantic where pilots' lives hung in the balance. A courier in a damp Navy uniform burst into the hangar. "Engineer Hall." "Sir, report from Squadron VC-9. Heads lifted. Tools stopped. The entire hangar seemed to freeze. The young courier caught his breath, then read from a crumpled message sheet. "Avenger aircraft engage a U-boat at night. Successful detection, successful attack, confirmed sinking." A stunned silence swept through the room. Hall blinked slowly, as if the words needed time to land. Beside him, a mechanic whispered, "No way. At night? Using our setup?" The courier nodded. "Radar guided. Crew credits the system for the kill." Hall leaned on the workbench, exhaling a long, shaky breath. He didn't smile. He didn't cheer. Instead, he felt his legs weaken, the weight of months of ridicule, skepticism, and fear suddenly evaporating. Behind him, one of the engineers murmured, "Bob, you did it." Hall shook his head. "No, they did it. The pilots trusted a box that barely wanted to stay alive. They risked everything." Still, the message meant one thing. The impossible had happened. The night I had drawn blood. Hall swallowed hard, looking around at his team. They were exhausted, half delirious from caffeine and pressure, but their eyes were bright now, alive, because this wasn't victory. This was validation. A Navy commander stepped forward from the shadows, rain dripping from his coat. Hall hadn't seen him enter. "Bob," the officer said, voice low, "I need you to understand what this means." Hall folded his arms. "I understand it's one kill." "One kill," the commander repeated, taking a step closer. "In a month where we've lost nearly 100,000 tons of shipping. One kill at night. Using technology we thought couldn't work. Technology you insisted we keep testing." Hall lowered his gaze. He knew the stakes. Every Liberty ship that burned. Every sailor swallowed by the Black Atlantic. Every convoy that vanished before dawn. The commander continued, "Germany's U-boats have ruled the night for 3 years. But if this report is accurate, tonight the balance shifted." Hall didn't speak, because he was already thinking ahead. How to stabilize the power flow. How to prevent overheating. How to train pilots to interpret radar echoes instinctively, like reading a compass. He stepped back to the bench, rolled up his sleeves, and grabbed a screwdriver. "Sir, one successful mission isn't enough. We need reliability. We need 10 kills. 20. We need to make radar so stable a rookie pilot can fly into a storm and still hunt." The commander smiled faintly. "I'll get you the resources. Whatever you need." Hall tightened the bolt. "I need time." "Then you'll have it, because as of this morning, Admiral King wants a fleet of radar-equipped Avengers, effective immediately. Gasps erupted around the hangar. Hull froze. A fleet, not a prototype, not an experiment. An entire generation of aircraft built around the wild idea he once scribbled on scrap paper. The commander added softly, "You've changed the Atlantic, Bob." Hull looked at the radar mount, the humming, sparking beast that had almost given up during its first real hunt, and whispered, "No, the ocean changed because the U-boats finally had something to fear." As he spoke, rain continued to lash the windows. Thunder rolled in the distance. Men rushed back to their workstations with renewed urgency, because now there wasn't just pressure. There was purpose. And out in the Atlantic, German submarines had already begun whispering among themselves. Rumors spreading through the U-boat pens in Lorient and Brest. Aircraft striking at night. Aircraft finding snorkels in total darkness. Aircraft that seemed to see without light. Some called them phantoms. Some called them curses. But one word began circulating more than any other. Avenger, a name that made even veteran captains lower their voices. And far beneath the waves, in a damaged Type 7 submarine limping back toward France, a shattered radio operator would soon send a transmission that confirmed every rumor. Enemy aircraft attacked using unseen detection, repeated depth charge runs, impossible precision. When that report reached Admiral Donitz, he would stare at it for nearly a full minute before whispering a single phrase. The night is no longer ours. The war had changed, and so had the rules. Focus. The psychological collapse of U-boat crews under relentless airborne radar hunts. The moment the first splash hits the water, everything inside U-boat U-502 changes. It's 3:14. The Atlantic is black, silent, except for the echoing thunk-thunk-thunk of exploding depth charges folding the ocean around the steel hull. Red emergency lights flash. Condensation drips from the ceiling like cold sweat. The boat's diesel fumes mix with panic. Thick, suffocating, metallic. Inside the cramped control room, Oberleutnant Zur C. Heinz Voigt grips the periscope handles. Knuckles white, heart hammering. He isn't looking through the lens. He knows there's nothing to see. They're too deep, too blind, too hunted. What he is doing is listening. Listening to the one sound every German submariner dreads. A steady radar buzz. Growing louder. Circling above. The crew can hear it to the hull. A faint, pulsing tremor, like an angry wasp trapped just outside their metal coffin. It means only one thing. The plane hasn't lost them. Not this time. Not tonight. You can almost feel the tension creeping through the compartment. Men swallowing hard. Men praying under their breath. Men staring at the depth gauge, inching deeper, 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 a number they are not supposed to reach. Another explosion rocks the boat. Tools fall from hooks. Someone screams. Someone else vomits on the floor. A light bulb bursts overhead, showering the room in glass. Voigt looks at his chief engineer. No words needed. They both know this isn't normal. This is new. Because, until recently, night was safety. Cloud cover was safety. Darkness was safety. But now, darkness is exactly where death comes from above, with wings and radar. Meanwhile, only 400 feet above the churning Blackwater, Lieutenant Bill Farrow circles patiently in his TBF Avenger, headphones crackling with the steady pulsing tone of a strong radar return. He can almost see the U-boat through the instrument panel, a ghostly presence sliding beneath the surface. Target still moving west, the radio man calls out, "No zigzag." They're panicking. Farrow grins, but it's tight, focused. He knows what that means. A rattled U-boat captain makes predictable choices. Predictable choices get submarines killed. Arm the next pattern. Farrow orders calmly. We're going again. The Avenger dips its wing, banking into another perfect attack line. Ocean spray flashes silver beneath the moon as the bomber roars forward. The Hunter fully in control. Up here, they can breathe. Down there, men are suffocating. The contrast is brutal. The contrast is war. Inside you, 502, depth charges detonate again, closer this time. The boat lurches sideways. A pipe bursts overhead, spraying freezing seawater. Sparks fly from an overloaded electrical panel. A crewman wails as he's thrown against a bulkhead. Voight slams his fist on the periscope housing. "This is impossible," he shouts. "They should not be able to track us this long." But deep down, he knows exactly what changed. Rumors had begun weeks earlier. Wild stories spreading to the U-boat pens in Loria and St. Nazaire. British radar new frequency, airplanes finding us in total darkness, boats vanishing without sending a final message. Rumors, ghost tales, nightmares. Now those nightmares have a sound, and it's echoing to the steel of his dying submarine. The radar tone spikes, louder, sharper, unmistakable. The Avenger is diving again. Someone in the control room sobs openly because they all understand this is not a duel. This is an execution. And the executioner can see everything, even through pitch-black ocean, even through steel, even through their last hope. Above the waves, Farrell lines up for another pass. The crew feels the vibration of the armed depth charges locking into release. No celebration, no cheering, just grim efficiency. Steady, steady. Release. A clean practice motion. The bombs fall. The ocean waits. The next sound, the one that follows, will determine whether you, 502, survive the hour, or joins the dozens of boats already lost to this new, invisible weapon. As the Avenger climbs back into the night sky, Farrell listens to the explosion that tells him the hunt is finally over. But the absence of that sound, the silence, might be even worse. Because silence means one thing. The U-boat is trying something desperate, something unexpected, something that could turn this hunt upside down. Focus. The U-boat attempts a last, dangerous maneuver, one that could kill both hunter and hunted. For a few long moments, the Atlantic is eerily quiet. No explosions, no sonar echoes, nothing. Just a deep, rolling pulse of the ocean and the steady drone of Farrell's Avenger circling above it. Farrell frowns. Silence isn't normal. Silence is a trick. Radio man rechecked the return. A few seconds of static, then, "Sir, they're gone." Signal faded. Farrell exhales sharply. Not relief, suspicion. U-boats don't just disappear. Not after this long. Not after that much damage. So what are they doing? Running deep? Turning back? Going silent? Or something far more dangerous? He banks the Avenger sharply, sweeping the sea with a slow, methodical radar scan. His radio man squints at the glowing screen, the sweeps illuminating his face like a ghostly green heartbeat. Then, a flicker, barely there. A tiny spark of return, much shallower than expected. Farrell freezes. "Oh no," he whispers. "They're coming up." The radio man looks over, confused. Coming up? But why would? And then he understands too. Because there's only one reason a U-boat would surface in the middle of an attack. Not to escape, but to fight. Underneath the rising waves, the men of U, 502 cling to anything bolted down as the submarine tilts and rises, groaning, traumatized, bruised by the ocean's pressure. Voight grips the handrail near the ladder. "Surface the boat now," he shouts. His executive officer stares at him, horrified. "Herr Oberleutnant, if we surface, we'll be exposed. The aircraft will. That aircraft will kill us either way." Voight snaps. "We're losing control. We can't stay down. We must take the fight up there. It's madness. It's also their only chance." The diving planes shift. Compressed air slams into the ballast tanks. The boat groans as pressure releases. Men cover their ears. The hull trembles violently. And suddenly, the U-boat rockets upward. The depth gauge spins like a possessed clock. Meters vanish. Water thunders against the bow. Everyone holds their breath. Because the next few seconds determine everything. Surface alive, or never surface again. Farrell's eyes widen as a huge shadow erupts beneath the waves. Pilot to crew, hold on. With a blast of frothing water and white spray, a massive black conning tower bursts into the moonlight. Water pours off the steel like blood from a wound. Hatches fly open. Crewmen leap onto the deck with machine guns, ripping off safety covers. "You've got to be kidding me," Farrow mutters. The Germans aren't trying to hide. They're trying to shoot him down. The Avenger roars overhead, tracer fire ripping upward in bright orange streaks. Bullets chew the air around the wing. One round snaps past Farrow's canopy, so close he feels a vibration in his teeth. "They're opening up," the turret gunner yells. No kidding. The entire U-boat deck looks like a frigate bristling with firepower. Every gun that can point skyward is already spitting lead. The radio man shouts, "They want us to dive in low. They're trying to force us into their kill zone." Farrow pulls the stick, climbing higher. The sky is his advantage. Range is his shield. He will not get dragged into their trap. Not tonight. But he also can't let them stay surfaced. If they run on the surface, they're fast, dangerously fast, and they can still fire that flak. Below him, U-502 surges forward like a wounded predator, engines roaring, the Atlantic splitting around its bow. Crewmen scream orders. Guns hammer upward. The captain stands exposed on the conning tower, coat whipping in the wind, searching for the Avenger through the spray. Voight has made his choice. He will not die trapped in the dark. He will die fighting under the sky. Farrow steadies his breathing. A surface U-boat is a bigger target, but also a gun platform that can tear an Avenger apart. He flips his weapon control panel open. Radio man, prep the Mark 24 torpedo. The radio man hesitates. "But sir, that's an acoustic torpedo." "I know." The radio man swallows hard. "Sir, if we drop it this close." He doesn't finish the sentence. Everyone knows the risk. Everyone knows the danger. The Mark 24 doesn't discriminate. It hunts anything loud, even an Avenger's own engines. But Farrow has no choice. The U-boat is running, shooting, escaping. And if it reaches open water at flank speed, they lose her. Farrow tightens his grip. Prep it anyway. He lines up the run. The U-boat crew reloads their guns. The sky tightens. The waves tense. And for one suspended moment, everything balances on a razor's edge. Hunter and hunted. Steel and sky. Innovation and desperation. Only one will survive the next 60 seconds. Focus. The Mark 24 torpedo drop, a weapon as dangerous to the Avenger as to the U-boat. The Atlantic wind buffets the Avenger as Farrow pulls into a wide, sweeping arc, lining up behind the fleeing submarine. The conning tower cuts a black scar through the moonlit waves, foam trailing behind it like the tail of a wounded beast. Tracer rounds still spit upward, though less precise now. The German gunners are firing blind, tracking only the engine roar above their heads. Farrow steadies the throttle. He knows what he's about to do is reckless. He knows every training manual screams, "Never drop an acoustic torpedo this close." He also knows U-502 is seconds away from slipping into the dark again. The radio man calls out from behind him, voice tight with fear and focus. Mark 24 is live. It's humming. Humming. That's the unsettling part. The Mark 24 Fido isn't dropped like a bomb. It's released almost gently, like letting go of a hunting dog straining against a leash. Once it hits the water, it listens. It thinks. It chooses its prey. Farrow rolls the aircraft into position, keeping his engine RPMs low. Too loud, and the torpedo might chase them instead. His gunner mutters, "Boss, this feels like suicide." Farrow doesn't disagree. Below, Oberleutnant Voight clings to the edge of the conning tower as freezing waves slam against his boots. Spray blinds him. His deck gun crews are shouting, reloading, firing without pause. "Keep her at flank. Don't you dare slow down." He can feel it, the boat trembling beneath him, the engine straining, the hull rattling from earlier hits. But there's still life in her. Still fight. If they can force the Avenger to break off, they might survive long enough to dive again. Then a lookout screams, "Flugzeug! Hinter US!" Voight spins. The Avenger is descending behind them, low and slow, too slow for an attack run, too controlled for a bomb dive. What is he doing? Why isn't he firing? Why isn't he dropping depth charges? Then Voight sees a shape beneath the Avenger's belly. A torpedo, but Not a normal one. No propeller spinning. No trail. No telltale mechanisms. Just a smooth, dark cylinder. His blood runs cold. He's heard rumors. Whispers. Allied airdrop torpedoes that didn't behave like torpedoes at all. But Berlin said they didn't exist. Berlin said there was no such weapon. Berlin lied. Farrell whispers to himself. Easy, easy. He reduces throttle. Engines growl softly. RPM drops. The U-boat's gunfire brightens the sky again, bullets snapping past the wings. But Farrell holds the line. Range 200 yards. The radio man reports, voice trembling. 200 yards is nothing. It's knife-fighting distance. The crosshairs settle over the U-boat's wake. Farrell flips the final safety cover. Mark 24 released. He taps the drop lever. For a heartbeat, nothing happens. Then the torpedo slips free, falling silently into black water with a soft splash, absurdly gentle compared to the violence around them. The Avenger immediately banks away, climbing hard. Climb! Climb! The radio man yells. Kill the noise. Farrell hauls the throttle back as much as he dares, making the Avenger whisper across the sky instead of roar. Behind them, the Mark 24 sinks several meters, steadies. Then its tiny propeller spins to life. Not fast, barely audible, almost delicate. A mechanical ear opens. It listens. Then it turns, straight toward the submarine. On the surface, Voight and his men feel it before they see it. A strange ripple in the water, a vibration that isn't from their engines. A lookout leans over the railing. Something in the water, behind us. Voight grabs the binoculars around his neck, squinting into the wake. At first, he sees only churned white foam. Then a shape emerges. Small, steady, unwavering. And it is following them. Not fast, not angry, just inevitable. Voight's stomach drops. Torpedo in the wake. Hard port, hard port. The helmsman spins a wheel. The submarine groans as it tries to turn, but it's too slow, too wounded, too exposed. Water thunders around the hull as 502 attempts a desperate evasive maneuver, but the torpedo adjusts. It curves. It listens. It follows. It's not chasing the boat's shape. It's chasing its heartbeat. Above, Farrell watches in the clouds, breath held tight in his chest. He knows what's coming. He knows what the Fido does when it catches its target. But the Germans don't. Not yet. The torpedo closes a distance. 50 yards. 30. 10. And then, a flash beneath the waves. A deep, guttural boom. The ocean erupts. A plume of black water shoots skyward, lit by fire from below. The U-boat's stern lifts violently. Men are thrown across the deck. Metal screams louder than the wind. Farrell's gonna whispers, Jesus, we hit her. No, Farrell thinks. The weapon hit her. The invention. The gamble. The wild idea. The thing the Navy mocked. The pilots doubted. And the Germans never imagined. But the U-boat is still moving, barely. Smoke pours from its aft section. The bow dips. The engines are dying. And now comes the ocean's verdict. Focus. The U-boat's final moments, and the moment a radical idea becomes undeniable truth. A low groan rolls across the Atlantic. The kind of sound steel makes only when it's dying. 502 lurches forward, then hesitates, shuddering like something alive but mortally wounded. The conning tower tilts slightly. Men scramble along the deck, shouting in panic, their boots sliding across the wet steel. Voight grips the railing, barely keeping his balance. Damage report, he roars. No answer. The engine room hatch blasts open and a sailor climbs out, coughing black smoke, eyes wide with terror. Both diesel engines failing, flooding in aft compartments. Voight curses under his breath. Flooding at this angle means only one thing. The stern bulkhead is cracked or worse. The German gunners fire a few last, meaningless bursts into the sky, tracers arcing upward like desperate flares. Their bullets vanish into the darkness. The Avenger is far above them now, circling safely out of reach. Voight knows the truth. They're alone, and they're sinking. "Seal the hatches," he shouts. "Prepare to abandon." A violent tilt cuts him off. The bow pitches downward. Hard. Sudden. Men scream as they're thrown across the deck. Some tumble into the freezing water. Others cling to the railing, knuckles white, eyes wide with the realization they've run out of miracles. The sea claws greedily at the submarine's hull, each wave tugging it deeper, dragging it toward the black below. Voight tries to stand, but the angle is worsening. U-502 is nosediving. Not slowly, not gracefully, but like a wounded animal collapsing under its own weight. The Atlantic has decided. Up above, Farrow watches through the canopy, his breath fogging the glass. The black outline of the submarine pitches forward, bow dipping under the waves. A long, hollow hiss accompanies the final rush of water, flooding into her breech compartments. His turret gunner murmurs, "Skipper, she's going under." No cheering, no whoops of victory. Just quiet, professional, somber, because watching a steel coffin sink, even in enemies, never feels triumphant. Farrow pulls the Avenger into a slow orbit. His radio man tunes the frequency to listen for the telltale ping of emergency beacons or rafts. They hear nothing but the static hum of the night. Below, the crew of U-502 makes their final choices. Some jump. Some cling to floating debris. Some stay on the tower, staring as their vessel tilts deeper until the ocean finally closes over it with a roar and a hiss, swallowing the last of the steel. Voight disappears beneath the waves, shouting orders until the water steals the sound from his throat. Within seconds, the Atlantic becomes calm again, terrifyingly calm, as if nothing had happened at all. Farrow releases a slow, heavy breath. "Radio man," he says quietly, "send the report." The radio man nods and taps the transmitter. Enemy submarine neutralized. Coordinates marked. Survivors in the water. A pause. "And, sir, I think you should know, this makes the third confirmed kill this week, using the new system." Farrow stares at the radar scope, the simple, glowing arc that had changed everything. It's no longer the untested contraption they once stuffed into the cockpit with electrical tape and wishful thinking. It's the future. A future born from one engineer's stubborn belief that the darkness of the ocean could be pierced. Thousands of miles away, in a cluttered Grumman workshop, Bob Hall has no idea what just happened over the Atlantic. He doesn't know that a submarine has fallen to a weapon combination many called absurd. He doesn't know that a torpedo bomber and a radar set have changed the shape of the war. But he will soon. Within weeks, reports flood back. U-boat losses rising. Night patrols suddenly lethal. Submariners terrified of the skies even at midnight. What once sounded like fantasy is now fact. Bob's wild idea has turned the TBF Avenger into something new. A creature of the night, a hunter of shadows, a machine that makes the ocean itself speak. And for the men who crew the U-boats, there's a new, whispered fear. If the radar sees you, the ocean will take you, far above the dark Atlantic. Farrow turns the Avenger for home, engines humming steady and low. The radar screen glows faintly beside him. A promise, a warning, a breakthrough. The ocean below is quiet again. But tonight, everyone, Americans and Germans alike, knows the truth. It won't stay quiet for long. "Yendi,